Support me, subscribe to my vlog, and help me hit 500 by January 1st. Yeah, hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the OGGM Adventures, your grumpy guide to all things gaming. The toxic gatekeeper. The man who keeps fighting for gaming in a city that doesn't want to game. And today, it is day 8 of RPG A Day 2020, and the word is shade. Shade. And again, before we start, I want to give a shout out to the people who have sponsored this amazing experiment in RPG creativity for the past 5, 6, 7 years. RPG A Day is something I look forward to every year. It inspires me to vlog and create and do art, so I really appreciate them doing this. And really, come on, if you have a few extra seconds and you've got access to a webcam or a camera or any form of creativity endeavor, take a moment to take part in RPG A Day 2020. This are 7 years, and it's a great way for the community to share each other's creativity and insight into this amazingly strange hobby that is role-playing. Okay, so that's my public service announcement. Now on to the word of the day, which is shade. Shade is an interesting word because it's not referring to shadows. It's not referring to light or darkness. And a lot of people, when they hear the word shade, they think, well, I'm in the shade. So shade means shadows. It could also mean insulting people, like throwing shade at someone means you're insulting them in a way they don't realize they're insulting them. Like, well, you're smarter than a goldfish. Is that a compliment or an insult? But when you look at the definition of the word shade, it refers more to perception and color and how we perceive color and perceptions of this shade of blue and this shade of green and this shade of orange and the subtle differences on the color palette, shades, and how our eyes interpret colors and images and shades, because we see the world in shades. Shades of light, shades of darkness, shades of color, shades of how images are perceived by our eyes. We're not actually seeing things the way they are. We don't know the way things actually are. We're only seeing things through our eyes and through the way our brain interprets the information that our eyes are interpreting based upon the colors and shades of the reality around us. Which means, like, for somebody who's colorblind, that shade of blue behind me over there might be a completely different shade to them. That might be green or orange, or I don't know, because I have troubles with blues and greens. I'm very mildly colorblind. Oh. I sometimes can't tell the difference between blacks and blues. My brother is even worse. He's really colorblind, and I know people who are even worse colorblind. So how we perceive it, and perception plays such an important part in the storytelling aspect of the hobby, because you could just have people roll dice and then stuff happens, but it's much more interesting to try and explain a scene and the way I, the DM, see the scene in my head, the way I describe the scene onto the table or the whatever, and then the way my audience perceives the scene. That's 3 different things. So that's 3 different shades of the perception of what just happened. And it gets and what they hear is not often what I say, because their brain has perceived the perception of the shade of information differently. Their eyes see differently things than my eyes. Their ears hear things differently than my voice. The table perceives things differently than maybe the way my brain perceives it one way, their brain perceives it another way. And in between all that is how the story is told. And sometimes that shading of the story, that perception, that your ability to shade things in a certain way so that your players perceive things in a certain way can let you direct the story. Which is why learning how to really grasp the storytelling aspect of this hobby is so important. Sure, there's, we could just kick down the door and take the treasure and kill the monster, but there's something to be said about showing, not telling. I could tell you, you see a skeleton. I could look up a picture on the interweb of a skeleton. We'll do it right now. And, show it to you and say, okay, at the end of the hallway, you see this. But that takes a really fucking long time. That took way too long. Or I could describe the skeleton. I could describe the way you perceive that image in the hallway, the way the light and shadow interact with the movement, the way you are perceiving, and perception is so important. And I've told this story before about how perception was used to make a group of characters and a group of players become unbelievably terrified of the simplest of things because the DM was able to shade the story in such a way that something very simple became terrifying. Now, the simple thing was it was a cow in the dark that had gotten out. But the way the DM shaded our perception, now, the way our brains interpreted the information we were receiving, because he never said the word cow. And if I describe a cow but don't call it a cow, what is it? Especially in the dark. If I never say cow or bovine or anything that would make your brain instantly think, oh, this is the word that I regulate to the image cow. But if I just describe its characteristics, what is your brain going to picture? Because in the situation I'm referring to, the DM described the dark, described how we'd fallen in a pit, described this creature with, red eyes and a thick, heavy breath and, the strange sound of a bell echoing in the fog, and was done with such great imagination that, you have 4 full-grown adults suddenly terrified like 6-year-olds in a role-playing game in a perfectly lighted room because the DM had done such an excellent job of shading our perception of a cow that when we actually found out it was just a cow and not some strange orc demon fog monster, we were all like, oh my God, and laughing and relieved and calling him an asshole because, how dare you get us all riled up over a cow. But the point is perception, shading, the way our brain perceives color, the way our brain perceives information, the way we can shade words, that this situation that is role playing presents us is so interesting and so fascinating and so unique a chance to truly fuck with people's brains, because you don't ever have to say cow. You don't ever have to say skeleton. If you have a group that is truly working with you and willing to engage, which is so hard right now. But if you can get that moment just right and you can shade the situation and shade their perception, because again, what their brain perceives is not necessarily what they're hearing or seeing, because once it goes through this messed up computer that is our brain, and no two of us are wired the same way, it could be completely different. What you imagine is always more interesting, always more frightening, always more fun than what it actually is. That's why dark rides are so popular. That's why dark roller coasters are so popular. That's why haunted houses are so popular. That's why horror is so popular, because what our brain perceives, how our brain takes those images and shades them based upon our experience our knowledge, our understanding of the word is so much often more frightening or more fun or more interesting or more funny than what actually is there. Because a cow isn't scary. It's like one of the least scary animals in the world unless it's charging you. But even then, it doesn't, it's kind of more like, it's not going to charge you. It's kind of more like just sort of lazily move at you unless there's like a stampede. A stampede is frightening. A cow, one single cow, unless it's going to try and knock you over, they're just kind of gentle, big, fluffy balls of fur and potential hamburger. They're like, just look at you with those eyes like, moo, sup. But the way that guy described that cow in the dark was so frightening that we were literally peeing our pants. Nobody wanted to leave to get up to go to the bathroom, even though I knew I had to go and my friend had to go. And we're both like, I don't want to get up. I don't want to move. I don't, because that would just break the heightened emotion of this scene. And then it's a cow? Shade. Perception. The way light and shadow interacts with the world and the way our brain interacts though and perceives those images, and how we as storytellers in the genre of role playing can use perception to shade the way our audience, our players, perceives the world and allows us to fuck with them and mess with their minds and heighten that emotion of fun and excitement and fear. Yeah, that's something we should explore more. And hopefully, you were lucky enough that you can get a group that is so on point that you can have this happen to you at least once in your gaming career, either as a player or a GM, because if you do, it's amazing. And I'll talk to you losers later. I'll see you somewhere in the shade.